So, welcome back to CDK Live. This session, we're going to be talking about the vehicle purchase process and the friction points, and really talk through the customer experience aspects of it, where there's those friction points in the buying and purchasing journey, and then also just what can dealers do? What's the greatest impact that dealers can do to improve the experience from the shopper as well as in the dealership for 2024? So we heard earlier from our earlier session with Brian McDonald, our CEO, about some of the things, the trends coming in 2024. And one of the things that he mentioned was around the fact that, it's a tighter year for dealers, that profitability is being squeezed. So before we jump in the friction points, just Peter, Dave, any thoughts on some of the current trends that are going on in 2024?
Yeah, you bet. First of all, hi to everybody. I'm Peter Kahn. I'm the head of research for CDK. I'll let Dave introduce himself. It's great to be here at NADA 2024. Quite frankly, over the last couple of years, with supply side constraints, the other side of that has been a real sugar high for dealers because they were able to sell a lot of times at MSRP or above. So profits like they've never seen in the past. But of course, that's all changing. So the supply side has rebalanced to meet demand. And so inventory's back on the lot. We're seeing anywhere from 60 to 75 days of inventory supply. Incentives are creeping back. Profit margins are going down. And to me, what that means is that dealers need to focus really hard, as Brian said, going back to basics, getting their team set so they can really focus on what does it take to sell a car and how many people does it take to sell a car and sell it efficiently, but at the same time, maintaining really high customer satisfaction. Dave?
Yeah, and we've tracked over the past few years, every month, how people are finding the car they want to buy, because 2 years ago it was very difficult to find cars. So we asked, are you finding the car in stock? Are you waiting for it to, on a truck? Or are you ordering it from the factory? And over that year and a half, it's obviously changed. It's shifted to people finding the car they want in stock more often than they did a year and a half ago, right? That makes a lot of sense. Our main question we ask people is it easy to buy a car? And now that what we've seen is it's easier to buy a car. That number goes up, the more cars are in stock. So the more people are finding that car in stock at the dealer, the happier they are. So it's actually kind of interesting that dealers, you do hear a lot, like they want supply, and that's why. The people want to find it on the lot, they want to find it in the color, the trim, all that kind of stuff. So the more there is in stock, the happier they are, and that's kind of where we are right now. And there's some issues still on affordability and things like that with interest rates and credit being tight, which is a problem we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, it's quite interesting to see that line over time shift and change, and it's proving out.
Yeah, and what you were talking about was our ease of purchase scorecard,
Right.
our monthly scorecard. How long have we been doing that, and what are some of the trends that
Over a
you've
year
been
and a half,
seeing
yeah.
over this last year? It sounds like things are, consumers are finding a fairly moderate. I think it was like 83%
It's
found.
been we created these a purchase scorecard because we all hear the anecdotes from a car shopper of how horrible it is and it took too long and it's the worst story you've ever heard. So when we wanted to ask a simple question though, was it easy or not? And for the entire process of asking this question over this long amount of time, it's always been over 80% of people saying it's an easy process.
Yeah.
Now there's certain points in that process that
Right.
they do not like as much as others, namely credit and all the financial stuff, negotiation, always the lowest scores. But overall, they still say it's easy or not, and it fluctuates between around 80 to about 85, 86% is about the highest it gets.
Yeah.
So one little thing I want to add to that, Dave's absolutely right, that overall shoppers are finding it easy to buy a car. 8 out of 10 are saying that. They agree it was easy for me to buy my car. However, 2 out of 10 are not saying that. And there are friction points along that journey, and as Dave said, negotiating price is one, finding the car they want is another one, going through the credit process is another one, particularly for Gen Zs, first-time buyers. But generally speaking, when you read the comments from shoppers, one of the things they say consistently is nobody wants to hang around a dealership. So if it takes too long, that starts to where you have a problem. And again, going back to that ease of purchase, we start to fall down if it takes too long. So what is too long? And we asked our shoppers that, and what we found was shoppers generally are saying anything more than 2 hours of visit at the dealership, they consider that unreasonable. I want everybody to hold that number in the back of their head because we're going to come back to that.
Yeah. Well, and you just were talking about, we just concluded our CDK's fourth annual friction point study that you and your team had conducted. Peter, why is it important for us to do this study?
It's important for us to do that study to really understand, again, for our dealers, how are the shoppers feeling? You've got to center and start with the shopper and understand how to meet the shopper and meet their needs. Obviously, and of course, dealers are, not only they want repeat customers and they want loyalty, that's one of the hallmarks of the franchise model, and then the OEMs are looking for that loyalty as well. So meeting the customer where they want to be, meeting those customer needs, and more importantly, is building customer trust. How do you build customer trust? And there's a couple of factors that really matter. Number one, answering their questions, making sure that all the questions that they have get answered, being respectful, courteous, professional, and then being transparent on the dealings with the customer. Doing those things earn the trust, and by earning the trust, they then think they got a fair price for the vehicle, and you can actually step back from that difficult negotiation that some people find themselves in. So we want to understand that really in depth from the shopper point of view, and then we can come around the other side of the desk and understand the dealer side and what's getting in the way of meeting that shopper needs. So both shopper and dealer is what we do with friction points and help our dealers really understand how to make their processes better and more efficient.
So Peter, were there any things that jumped out at you or any trends in particular from the friction points that we did last year to this year?
There's a lot that's the same.
Yeah.
And there's a few things that are different. So let's talk about some of the things that are different. I don't know why I'm starting on that first, but one of the things we noticed is, and we ask a question about whether or not somebody waited through the sales process. And it turns out, in all cases, pretty much, shoppers are waiting. Usually they're waiting for, and this is a big one, they're waiting for the dealer to get the vehicle prepped so they can do the test drive. They're waiting to get, to be able to do a credit pull. They're waiting at the desk. They're waiting in a lot of different places. But interestingly enough, the wait periods went down from last year. So I think the investment the dealers have made in technology and to some extent looking at their processes, there has been improvement, but shoppers are still waiting. And that wait, again, to my point earlier, is where we really start to have problems, again, in customer sat as well as dealer productivity.
There's been so much focus, especially in the last few years, around consumers online, utilizing on the the dealer side of leveraging technology like their digital retail tools. Anything notable there as far as adoption or a usage of? Is there any? Because we hear this, hey, things are, inventory is normalizing. This sort of sense of going back to normal.
Yep.
Anything to note as far as changes in that process?
Yes, great question. Most dealers are using a digital retailing tool as a lead capture only. They put it on the website, set it and forget it, and then they wonder why their leads aren't that great. They're not bringing the leads into the showroom and truly following what we would consider modern retail practice. And that is, if the shopper engages on the website and provides a lot of information on the website, it really is the responsibility of the sales organization to bring that information in and use it in the deal preparation and in the showroom. And what we saw was there actually was a decline in folks investing in a digital retailing tool. They probably bought it during COVID, they had to have it, and now they're thinking, oh, I'm not getting much from it, but they didn't really leverage it in the showroom, and that's where it really pays off. So that's what we did see.
And Peter, what about, as it's sort of related, as inventory is normalizing, sales is spending less time trying to find those vehicles that they need to source. So what are we seeing as far as where sales folks are spending their time?
Salespeople are going back to doing what they used to do, spending less time looking for inventory and spending more time selling. Mm-hmm. Now they are spending a lot of time working on inactive leads. They are spending a lot of time working with duplicate leads, but they are moving back to selling.
So Dave, back over to you. I want, before we get into some of the insights from this study, what are some of the predictions that you have for 2024?
Oh, that's a great question. I think what we're going to see in 2024 is it's woven into the friction point study in many ways. With this inventory returning, salespeople following up on leads, doing that more often, not worried about the inventory coming in, all those factors. I think what we're going to have to see is, product mix is one of the things that's missing. So there are still many sought after cars that aren't in ready supply. So automakers across the board, each one is in a different state with their inventories. Namely, the Japanese automakers are still short. They could sell many more if they had them, where others, mainly domestics, have too much supply. So that's going to be the story of 2024, that balancing act, and all the automakers need to get that right to get profitable. And then on the customer side of things, everyone is crossing their fingers that interest rates come down, right? I'd like to say, and I've been saying it to everyone this week, there's really only two buyers right now, the ones that need to buy a car and the ones that want to buy a car. And the one that's missing, so they need to buy a car, they got in an accident, something like that. They want to buy a car, they have plenty of money. A lot of these are luxury buyers and they get what they want, right? The person who's missing, and that all the interest rates really factor into and affordability factors into, is that buyer that could purchase if the deal was right. If the money was there, like they could accelerate their purchase decision based on that. Those people are completely on the sidelines. Cars last a long time, they can wait it out, and they're waiting it out. So the industry needs to, the industry really can't do much about the interest rates, but the interest rates are one of the primary factors. And we are seeing some automakers increase incentives because they know those interest rates aren't coming right now and they need to move the cars now. So we're going to keep seeing, again, another balancing act with that. And the more supply they have, the higher the incentives are going to be.
Yeah. So Peter, getting back to the friction point study, let's talk a little bit about the consumers and their expectations, yep, and what dealers need to really focus on around that consumers. We obviously know consumers are very price sensitive, as Dave just mentioned, and we've got a pretty, interest rates are very high, but what else do they care about, and what should dealers be focused on?
Yeah, a couple of things on that. For the most part, and this isn't a surprise, most shoppers are interested in getting a good price, particularly with inflation the way it has been, with MSRP prices going up the way they did. But interesting enough, about 1 out of 4 kind of want a fast experience. And again, 1 out of 4 want expert guidance from the dealership. And particularly with Gen Z customers, first-time buyers, they haven't gone through this before. So along with that, 89% of the folks who responded to our survey, the shoppers, said that we want to get all our questions answered. We want to take the time necessary to get all our questions answered. By the way, we did survey 1,300 shoppers, people that have bought a car in the last 3 months. And on the dealer side, we surveyed over 350 dealers, store leaders, and everybody in variable operations, sales associates, F&I managers, sales managers, et cetera. So that's number one. Number two, time is your friend, time is your enemy. As I mentioned before, shoppers are telling us anything that takes longer than 2 hours is a problem. And we use a metric that we call likely to recommend, which turns out, for those folks that know it, Net Promoter Score, NPS. If the dealer can get the shopper through the process, get all the questions answered, make sure they're comfortable with the purchase decision they're going to make in 1 hour, the satisfaction measured by NPS is really, really high. If it takes more than 4 hours, the other side of the spectrum, NPS is terrible. So time is your friend, time is your enemy. Anything more than 2 hours, it's now working against you. So going back to the dealer side of things, the dealer needs to understand what's getting in the way of not being able to get a customer through the sales process in 2 hours or less.
Yeah. We often focus on the sales side of things, but talk a little bit about the F&I side, because I think often, as last year's friction point, F&I was a big pain point. So what did we find this year?
Again, a couple of things. Number one is most shoppers, they run into, this is the dead space. Actually, the meet and greet, the needs assessment, the test drive, all those things work reasonably well. There are wait times. They get the deal desk, and then the deal gets pushed into the F&I, and that's where everything falls off the edge of the cliff. Typically, shoppers are finding themselves waiting anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes A lot of shoppers actually wait more than 45 minutes, going back to that satisfaction score. If somebody's waiting for 30 minutes or more for F&I, again, satisfaction falls down into the ground. Not only that, you lose the momentum of the sale. And so by the time that shopper shows up in the F&I office, the momentum is gone. So the F&I manager has to warm them up again, and start selling the menu products. And so and the shopper honestly just wants to get the keys and get out the door. So we're seeing that also, particularly in the F&I office.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say that in the report, a lot of what Peter and I are saying, it might sound negative, but in the report, most of those numbers improved from the previous years. The wait time on the F&I, and on the dealer side, many of their pain points also saw improvement. So it was good to see, and we do think their dealers are listening, and they're trying very hard to improve those scores each day, each week, each month, and then we see it as we do this every year. You get to see that all in totality. It's great.
So Dave, again, we heard this morning about just changes that are going on in the industry overall. Do you see the role of the dealership changing?
Yeah, this is one of the things that in our ease of purchase scorecard we've been tracking. We track, are you buying entirely online, partially in store, all of the dealership? It's a key question for us as CDK because we want to be that bridge between doing certain steps online and getting through the funnel quickly, getting through the process quickly. Very few people, and I'm talking 1%, 0%, are buying completely online. That number is not moving. The number that seems to be moving the most is doing it entirely in the dealership. People want, and I don't know if this is a side effect of COVID or not, they want to get back into the dealership, they want to see and touch the car, they want to see the inventory on the lot, and they want to be there. So the idea of entirely online, we do this all the time, we look at this number every month, it is just not moving. So if you hear anyone talk about direct-to-consumer models, we're seeing some Challenger EV brands going to a franchise because I don't know if the direct-to-consumer wasn't working for them necessarily, but we're seeing it's essentially just not there.
Yeah.
I do not predict that number to move. Like a year ago, I was like, oh, maybe it'll move up to 3%, maybe it'll move at 5%. It's not moving. So perhaps the tools aren't being integrated by OEMs as much as they thought. I'm not quite sure, but it just doesn't seem like the consumer is finding that option at all, finding that option enticing, or what have you, but they're just not doing it.
Yeah.
The test drive is the reason why they're coming in and to get their questions answered. This isn't a click and buy type of thing, especially for Gen Z. Interesting enough, Gen Z is the least likely to go online, which is a bit counterintuitive. This is the first time they bought a car, they want to spend that time. The test drive really matters, that's the moment of truth. So we're going to see customers continue to go to the dealership, absolutely.
Peter, that brings up a good point. I know you surveyed across the different generations. Yep. Was there anything notable generation-wise, or were they all, for the most part, we're seeing the same pattern?
No, there's definitely difference. Old guy like me, I've done this many times, so I kind of know what to expect. Let's flip it on the other side. Again, I mentioned Gen Z, it's their first time. They got money in their pocket, they want to get a ride, but they want to get those questions answered. They did have our ease of purchase was down a little bit with Gen Z than it was with our other generations. Again, they're more interested in getting that expert guidance from the salespeople. And again, going back to once they understand everything, let's move, baby. Let's get this thing done and let's go.
Yeah, no surprise there. I think that's how we all feel.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, as we wrap up, what are some of the a few takeaways that you want to leave our audience with around friction points?
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand, especially for dealers, sales managers, dealer principals, is to really understand your sales journey workflow from the dealer point of view. What are the bottlenecks that are keeping folks from doing this job faster and more efficiently? May even save you headcount, but certainly can move the shopper through the funnel quicker. That's number one. Number two, I think it's also important not to think about the sales journey from a department standpoint, but thinking about it from a completely seamless workflow. Don't go after point solutions because we found out most people are using 3 to 4 to 5 systems, the F&I manager and the sales manager most of all. So think about the F&I, excuse me, the variable operations workflow seamless, match your technology to your process. Don't think about silos and departments, and that's what I think dealers need to focus on for 2024. Back to the basics, make it easy.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
That's great.